conversation with Marcylle Combs, who is a dynamic leader with over 30 years experience growing a healthcare company into a multi-million-dollar enterprise across 3 states. So definitely stick around for this podcast. After selling her business in 2018, she launched Mac Legacy, the Marcylle's company, and Mac Legacy Investments, where she leads as president. A certified John Maxwell speaker and trainer, Marcylle passionately mentors others through consulting, coaching, and speaking worldwide. Founder of the nonprofit 2612.org, she combines business savvy with a heart for service. A wife, a mother of 5, a grandmother of 6, Marcylle lives to inspire others to lead boldly and live purposely. So without further ado, Marcylle Combs. Hi there, and welcome to the Power Up Your Life podcast. I'm Kelly Resendez.
And I'm Mandy McAllister.
And we have the distinct pleasure of bringing my friend Marcylle Combs onto the show. I got to meet her through my dear friend John Maxwell, and just blessed to have her here with us. So Marcylle, without further ado, would you give us a little bit of your background?
Yes, and thank you, Kelly and Mandy, for having me on today. I'm so excited to spend a few minutes with you. I'm going to give you the short version because I have a very long life. But I was a nurse, and I just kind of went to work for a little home health agency, which is people who go into homes and do skilled care for mostly elderly. And truly just fell in love with it. And through a whole revolution, I didn't have any money, didn't know anything about business, had my bachelor's degree, but never didn't grow up with entrepreneur parents. And I knew the business was going to sell. And by some miracle of God, I talked the owner into selling to me. Truly. I said, when you have no money, it's easy to risk a lot of money. And so I went to work one day and was not in debt, really. And the next day I woke up and I was in $1 million of debt. So that was a long time ago. And so during that whole tenure, I bought and started probably 6 or 7 different companies, grew to about 70 million, and then sold that company 6 years ago and started 2 more companies because truly I don't have enough sense to retire. So I love getting up every day and doing something different. And I think that's the challenge in life. So there's the short story of that.
Wow, that is incredible. I'm sure along that journey, there were times that you felt like you were a little stuck and you didn't know which way to go. Do you have like a way that you make decisions? Is it intuition? Is it data? Like when you considered making that first investment, because like you said, you went from 0 to $1 million. That's a big risk, right? And yet you wouldn't be where you are today had you not taken it. So how do you get through that yourself?
I think in that journey of being a nurse and then being put in a management position, I was fortunate enough to have a young man who was actually my age that mentored me in business. And so by the time I really bought the business, I knew how it worked. I would love to tell you I had an accountant and an analytical team to evaluate that, but that's really not the truth. I just felt compelled that this was a decision I needed to make. And I felt with God's grace that I can make it through that. Now, again, I did have, which for my business, in all essence, was a government contractor, a very smart advisors around me. But I tend to be a big risk taker when it comes to business, not with my physical body, but with business.
Yeah.
So now, as I sold the next company and formed another one, I will say I did really look. I did have more data to take a look at, and I knew I could make it work based on the numbers and also based on what I thought the margin could be for the company I sold to, because I sold to them and then a big hospital system and then formed a management company and managed that entity for them, which was some of my greatest leadership lessons. I think Kelly, I know you said earlier, I had the opportunity and the privilege of interviewing you. And some of my best lessons were probably taught by some of the worst leaders that I had ever worked for. So I will say, that.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
I love that. I love this idea of buying a business, because if we know most startups fail, if you buy something that's pre-existing, your chance of having tremendous success is much, much higher. So it sounds like the bulk of your business was in this kind of home health space. I worked in medicine before leaving my W-2 to be in real estate full time. And we know about the silver tsunami that's about to hit. So our people are getting older. I'm curious, from your vantage point, these businesses like yours that serve seniors, what are some things that you're doing to make sure that you have the bandwidth to take care of everyone?
Let me just say, as I said, 6 years ago, I sold as a direct provider of that care. It's a wonderful business. And if you see private equity, you'll see we have gotten the attention, especially in the last 10 years or so, of private equity. And I have good friends who work in that space, but there's nothing like an individual owner. I think the whole, would you say, oh, if a silver tsunami, which I don't ever plan to have silver in my hair. I know that's very stylish, but I won't be one of those.
No.
I, I won't be one of those. So, but I will tell you, my goal as an employer and as a person was to be the employer of choice. And I can frankly say, that I had the opportunity and the privilege to become that in my market. So people wanted to work for me. That's not always the case. I think you have to, when you're new in an area, nobody knows you and they don't know this little girl who obviously little girl then didn't know what she was doing. But I just tried to put forth, truly for me, I'm a person of faith, biblical principles in a secular world. And if you take biblical principles, and you take what Jesus, how he treated his disciples and his friends, then it's pretty straightforward with how you should treat other people. You do have to, in our world, electronically, especially in the last even 5 or 6 years that I've worked, will have to get thousands of resumes off the internet. It is very hard to decipher those. I still personally love when I have a recommendation of someone. And if you're listening to this, let me tell you, young people, when you put your resume out there, it's one of 1,000. And if you don't have some way to become that, as an old book, the purple cow in the midst of cows, you won't get noticed. You might be the greatest person. So I will say, Mandy, there's a lot of different ways to recruit. But the number one way to make sure you have enough people to take care of patients is by becoming the person people want to work for.
Oh, that's amazing. Amazing. What would you say? Like, you were a leader, like you were running your own company. I also know you have children and grandchildren. What advice would you give to the people out there? I have adult children now, but Mandy's got littles at home. Like, how did you really make sure that you felt successful in every area of your life?
Do you know I have 5 children?
Yeah.
I have
And
4
5
boys.
boys.
I know, good grief, I had a whole litter of children. But I have 4 boys, all 2 years apart, and then our life was blessed through, not by birth, but by choice.
Mhm.
We adopted a little girl, who is now grown. All my children are grown now, and I have 6 grandchildren. I think that, I don't really believe in balance. Let me just say this. I think balance is a hopeless, guilt-ridden pool to roll around in.
Mhm.
I think it's a matter of priorities, and I will say, fortunately for me, I had a husband who was very supportive, and I had a lot of friends who were supportive in that because I'm very energy prone. I feel less energized these days, but people tell me, in my old age, I'm still that. But if something was important for my kids, then it had to be important for me.
Oh.
I tell the story of I live in the Dallas Fort Worth area. I was at a conference I was speaking at. I had to get on a plane, get in a taxi before the Uber days because it was senior night on the football field and the moms walked their kids on there. I could not miss this, but I had already committed. The school system they didn't contact me to see what my schedule was before they made senior football night. I got on a plane, changed in the back of the cab, walked on the field because, I was in my zoot suit from, speaking, got back in the cab, went back to the airport and got back on. I would tell you that it was essential that I be there. And so because of that, I know that sometimes work wins and sometimes home wins, and if you're going to be in my opinion, which you asked, Kelly, in my opinion, um, you can't be everything to every person,
Yeah.
and you can only get your priorities straight, but home can't always win. Sometimes work has to win.
Mhm.
And, last week I was privileged to get invited to an expense paid uh, event in Puerto Rico, but my daughter had a miscarriage. And so I had to, which I'm not going to talk about that because I'll surely cry. But I had to get on a plane and go to Florida because now one part of my being could go and sit on the beach in Puerto Rico if my adult child needed me in Florida. And those are the kinds of choices you can't write out a recipe book for.
Right.
You have to make at the moment.
Yeah,
I love that
absolutely.
idea of prioritization rather
Mm,
than balance
right.
because the mom guilt stuff. So I have a 9 to a 15-year-old. So I'm in it right
Yeah.
now,
You're in
and
it.
the way I get away from the mom guilt is by, I know that I'm teaching them that mom deserves to go chase her dreams.
Yeah.
Mom needs to help these other people with her speaking engagements and all these other things,
Mhm.
right? So there is that other side of the coin. And I make sure that I'm home when the things matter. Totally agree with that. As a business owner, we are kind of unconventional thinkers in many ways. And you talked about being a risk taker, not with your body, but with your businesses. Tell me about some unconventional strategies that you've got that some people might not agree with.
Oh gosh, what a question. I think that I probably just breed unconventional. I always say what I lack in brains, I make up in creativity. Um, so I I think that um, the interesting thing, because we went into 2020 and all of a sudden the world had to change to this remote worker. Well, we have been doing home care automatically lends itself to that, but we had been doing remote type work before it became cool. We had employees that would leave us that did quality assurance, which is a job that you could do remotely as well as in the back office. And so we had to jump through laws for W-2s. What I would encourage all business people, not just women, to do is think about why you're doing what you're doing. And if you have a great employee, can you modify their work? The other thing I love to ask people even today is, what's your dream job? So if we grow this company, what would you like to do? Now, again, there's a lot of work that has to go on their part to that, but what would you like to do, and how can we grow to meet that, so that you aren't just churning and burning employees that walk out the door? I think that's a female. I think we tend, not that I don't know a lot of great creative men, but I think we tend to be more creative in our approach.
No, that's awesome. I believe wholeheartedly, like, I wish we could take you and get you in front of so many other young people to just show what's possible. How do you think
Right.
that we do unlock some of, because I know you're really in your feminine power, right? I've met you, like you're lovely.
Yeah.
Like, how do we show so many younger people what's possible? Like, what would you do to solve that crisis right now? Because I think a lot of people are not authentic and out there hard charging, trying to get what they want.
Mhm. I would say one thing. I think we have and I've spoken a lot on generations. I think we have a crisis of mental health in this country. I think part of that comes from, we have instantaneous news. We instantaneously know something that happens across the world, and it's stressful. We knew immediately with the whole conflict in the Middle East. And so their anxiety is really high. If I could do anything with my magic wand, I would try to teach young people the difference between stress and anxiety. Stress is something we all deal with. We deal with it every day. And I had a college professor tell me this, that they had a college student call him up and say they had a flat tire and they couldn't come to class all week because they had a flat tire. Well, that's, you know, we're putting that in the anxiety category, and really stress. I mean, I got to figure out how to get I mean, that's a silly answer, but it shows the problem is that they're living in the same world. And how do we speak to them in a different world? I'll add one more thing, Kelly, just to try to make sure I clarify. I believe, especially in my generation, women that succeeded they had to take on all male qualities. They had to become the tougher, the meaner, and I don't believe that that's true. I believe that you can be a really strong woman and be a feminine woman. Don't mistake my kindness for weakness, because you will not find it in this woman. But I'm going to be kind and polite, and I'm going to do all those things. You don't want me on your golf team. And I don't drink well. So you sure don't want me drinking out at the bars with you. Plus I had a whole litter of children. I got to go home. So someone said to me early in my career, Marcylle, you need to go out with the girls. I said, are you kidding me? My youngest child is 2, and then they're 4, 6, and 8. I can barely get this job done and get home. I can't go out with them. If that's success, I cannot make it that way. But I would tell you, you don't have to do that to be a strong woman in the workplace.
I 1000% agree with that. I think, capitalism, when it was started by men, and that's why it has this significant masculine energy associated with all things capitalism. And the generation before us the one woman who was in charge had to
Right.
take on masculine qualities. But now we are setting the table that these feminine qualities of empathy, of inclusion, nurturing each other, like
Right.
those are the things that take businesses further faster now. The addition of these feminine energy things, I love that. So in building a business, we are largely female entrepreneurs at GoBundance Women. Many of us are also investors, but in scaling these businesses, you always hit some time that you don't have clarity. Tell me something that when you're talking to a person who doesn't have clarity, specifically a female entrepreneur, what's something that you do, that next action that helps you find clarity?
Well, as I said, I'm a person of faith, so prayer is at the top of that list. But after that comes a logical evaluation of the situation. One, does it? Am I? I've really never had a partner, but I believe that scripture on unequally yoked. I have to make sure my partner, even if they're from the same moral faith, driven perspective I am, do they have the same philosophy toward employees? I've
Mhm.
always done mostly service type businesses. Um, and one, then does the numbers work? Do the numbers get you? You have to make a profit. There's nothing wrong. I mean, if you're going to stay in business, you have to make a profit. And, do you have a team that can help you with that? So, and again, I never wanted to do accounting. I can pay someone to do accounting. Really, ChatGPT and some other of the AI programs, they're running circles around evaluation of things these days. So how can I evaluate whether this is a smart decision? But in the end, Mandy, in the end, you have to have the guts to jump. You
Great.
have to say, I'm willing to go bankrupt. I have friends who have done really, really well in the big corporate world. I'm not a big corporate girl. You don't want to hire me for that because I don't do what you tell me to do. So it's a problem. And I've told people that when I sold my last business, you don't want me because I know you don't want me. And so I'm not going to put me or you in that situation. Um, I think that evaluation, prayer, thoughtfulness, does it meet your goals? But in the end, you just got to do it. And some of our best lessons have been learned from failures.
Yeah.
What was it, Walt Disney that said you want to fail small early in your career, so that helps you later. I would say measured failure. That's what I didn't want a big one,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
measure failure.
I love it. Well, Marcylle, you have been an amazing guest. Just some things that really stood out for me. Don't confuse my kindness for weakness. I literally had the chills because
Oh,
I can feel your power. And a lot of people, that's the thing. They're afraid. They're afraid that if I show
mhm.
up authentically and I'm not this, persona that's expected in the workplace. So just that reminder to be very, very authentic has been great. Mandy, what about you?
Oh, I wrote that down too. So good. I love the idea of being the employer of choice because if
Mhm.
you're taking care of the people that are taking care of your customers, that is a formula for big success. And one that I really, really love that I kind of bang tables over too is balance sucks. Balance is unattainable. We're
Yeah,
looking for priorities.
yeah,
Like, what is the thing that matters right now? And when
yep,
I'm playing Legos, I'm playing Legos,
yeah.
you know?
Right.
I love it. I love it. So Marcel, one thing that we always want to make sure of, and we do in GoBundance, is like, how can we support you? What's like a resource or a connection that might change the ball game for you?
Well, I have a new book out. In fact, I have it right here.
Mhm.
Shocking. It's about hiring your friends and working with your friends, and my whole take on friendship management. And anyone who wants to buy the book, they can get it on Amazon. It's never hire your friends, but the never is marked out.
Love it.
So that's the number one way you could support me. And of course, I have a podcast, 50% with Marcylle Combs, and then it's marcyllecombs.com. If you spell my name right, you can find me.
I love it. I love it.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you so much for your time and generosity and wisdom, and just, for anyone out there listening, definitely share this so that we can share Marcylle's message with the world. So thank you for joining the Power Up Your Life podcast, brought to you by GoBundance Women.